In 1967, this accidental Biafran, Major General Victor Banjo, was arrested, tried and executed along with 3 others for subversion. The State versus Victor Banjo and 3 others was a stage-managed political performance intended to demonstrate to Biafran population that everyone was being closely watched. The trial was disorganized and hasty. In this video, we re-examine the story of the trial and execution of Victor Banjo and 3 others. Welcome to History Media In-Depth History. Now, before we continue, if you receive any value from our informative contents, please like this video and consider subscribing to History Media. Don't forget to leave a comment below. Thank you. The case, the State versus Victor Banjo and 3 others, provide a view of how politics was played within Biafra and gives insight into how paranoia became enshrined in Biafra's political culture in the first months of the war. Far from being an isolated case of treason, it was a referendum on Biafra's nationality, the ethnic composition of the new country, and the relationship between the war and the larger task of creating a Biafran state. In a way, the case helps to create a feeling that non-Easterners were not wholly regarded as Biafrans and breed suspicion about the internal politics of Biafra. It also created an excuse for increasingly absolute power in the daily administration within the new country. Since the Biafran authorities lay claim to the maintenance of law and order as opposed to the Nigerian states, the court system was still working even after other sectors of the economy had shut down as a result of the conflict. The growing paranoia within the Biafran leadership, the humiliation of Banjo's retreat from the West, and the burden that the war placed on Biafra's judiciary came to a climax in 1967, when Biafran Army Major General Victor Banjo was tried and executed for subversion. Banjo was a Yoruba military officer from southwestern Nigeria who was imprisoned in January 1966 for his role in the failed coup that brought Nigeria's first republic to an end. When Biafra seceded, he was serving his sentence in the eastern region, and seeing Banjo as a figure who could help to make the case for Biafra's independence to the Yorubas in the federal Nigeria, Ojukwu offered him the chance to leave prison and join the Biafran army. His task was to lead a supposed liberation army to occupy the Midwest and then march on to capture Lagos. As Banjo marched towards the west, a British intelligence source would note, his lines would then touch sympathetic chords in many Yoruba circles in the western region. Soon after Biafra's breakup, he wrote a letter to his wife where he stated, quote, "I never approved of the idea of my friend here, Ojukwu, declaring a separate state, but one cannot always control the behavior of one's friends. Everyone has a right to an opinion on any matter, and in both political and military crises, the ultimate test of sagacity is in the sources or failure thereof." Banjo's release and commission into the Biafran army generated considerable dispute among the army's leadership, and when suspicion fell on Banjo, he found few allies among his Biafran colleagues. In his orders to Banjo, Ojukwu stated that the Biafran troops under his command will remain in the southwest just as long as we in Biafra think it essential for the Yorubas to consolidate their position and sovereignty against any foreign threat. Banjo accepted the offer and was given command of Biafra's first and only major offensive campaign, which intended to take the Midwest states. Banjo's mission in July 1967 was initially successful, with 7,000 Biafran troops seizing Benin's capital city in just a few days, sending the Midwest state's military governor fleeing on the back of a bicycle. Despite this success, many in the Biafran government began to doubt Banjo's loyalty at this point. Victor Banjo was given orders to march on to Lagos, but the Biafran troops faced opposition at Ore and retreated, losing control of the Midwest in the process. Biafra's humiliating retreat was an embarrassment to Ojukwu, a huge blow to Biafran morale, and according to many analysts, the first step towards Biafra's eventual military disadvantage. Upon their return to Enugu, Colonel Victor Banjo and Major Emmanuel Ifeajuna, a Nigerian-turned Biafran officer, who had participated in the coup that overthrew the First Republic, as well as their subordinate Major Phillip Alele and Samuel Agbam, were arrested and tried before the Special Tribunal of Biafra for 2 counts of violating the Law and Order Maintenance Decree of 1967. The first charge was that the officers without lawful authority made preparation of carrying out an armed disturbance against the military governor and some officers of the Republic of Biafra, which was essentially a charge of insubordination for turning back at Ore and failing to capture Lagos following their occupation of the Midwest. The second charge, framed as subversion, was that they, with intention to cause breach of public order, agreed to procure the downfall of the government of the said republic by violent and unlawful seizure of the military governor and head of state of the Republic of Biafra and commander-in-chief of its armed forces and other military officers. The state prosecutors had alleged that the officers had devised a plan against Ojukwu that would conclude in their capturing power in either Biafra, Nigeria, or both, which would be followed by turning over control to Obafemi Awolowo, according to most versions of the story. Although multiple sources supported the existence of a plot, the details of the charges against Banjo and the others appeared to be fabricated. In addition to subversion, the charges included foreign currency stockpiling, coordinating with foreign agents and other minor offenses. Phillip Alele was charged with a third offense, intent to incite a breach of public order for communicating with trade unionists. The trial was disorganized and hasty. Banjo's hearing was held on a single day on September 28, 1967, presided over by Justice George Ekemena, who was assisted by a military officer and a civilian administrator. Evidence for the prosecution was presented by the head of Biafra's army and intelligence directorate, along with different witnesses whom the conspirators allegedly tried to enlist into their conspiracy or who overheard the negotiations taking place. Banjo and Ifeajuna, exhausted and poorly fed, conducted a cursory and inadequate cross-examination of the prosecution's witnesses. Banjo, speaking on behalf of all 4 men and without legal representation, mounted only a brief defense of their actions. Perhaps realizing that the decision had already been made, the statements of accused consisted of the accused person's activities in assisting the governor one way or the other to successfully prosecute the war. He stated that there was a group of young men who met occasionally to discuss current state of affairs and the conflict. He said also that this group never plotted to overthrow the government. He claimed that the accused could not have been involved in such a scheme given their previous performances and their strong regard for the governor. This appeal in favor of Ojukwu was not successful, but because the tribunal was stacked against the accused, there was likely no defense that could have prevailed. A civilian lawyer that was sent to the tribunal later stated that he had been directed to convict the 4 individuals regardless of their defense or how poor the case against them was. When the lawyer refused to do so, he was detained and spent the remainder of the war period in prison. Justice Nkemena, otherwise known as a defender of judicial independence, agreed to chair the tribunal. Nelson Otta recalled that the trial was a solemn and scrupulous affair, despite the hysteria and white-hot hate that were riding the wind. Outside the heavily guarded courtroom were thousands of men and women who, however mistaken they were, strongly believed that the 4 men on trial had sold Biafra and therefore deserved nothing but death. "Have them all shot," was the popular cry of these men outside the courtroom. The trial proceedings appeared impartial. However, in Otta's view, it was a trial that in normal circumstances he would have thrown out of hand. Victor Banjo, Emmanuel Ifeajuna, and their subordinates were sentenced to death by firing squad. They were executed 4 days later in a yard near Biafran Army headquarters. The execution was conducted under the perfect glare of mass publicity. Everybody who could stand the sight was permitted to go along and witness how Biafra supposedly deals with saboteurs. The court proceedings, which has been officially held in secret, allowed the Biafran government to maintain the appearance of judicialism, control the narratives, and prevent any possibility of public sympathy for the plotters. The State vs. Victor Banjo and 3 others was a stage-managed political performance intended to demonstrate to Biafran population that everyone was being closely watched. The case was also a message to the judiciary and to government employees in general that you were not allowed to go against Ojukwu's wishes. It also demonstrated to the soldiers the consequences of disloyalty. Consequently, some Biafrans found the execution of Victor Banjo and 3 others as disturbing and interpreted it as a signal of future repressive actions to come. Many observers were angry with Banjo and Ifeajuna for their betrayal, but were also disturbed by their executions and for the note of paranoia that it brought into Biafra's political life. Their guilt or innocence cannot be easily discerned from Biafra's partial historical records, but the consequences of their executions are clear. In the aftermath of the Banjo trial, a simple suggestion that Biafra should make peace with Nigeria could be considered sabotage. Imaginary spies and saboteurs were seen almost everywhere, and the state began to consume itself from within. This trial was also important because it revealed the fault lines within Biafra and her national identity. And finally, Banjo's trial did little to assuage fears that non-Igbos including Ibibios, Efik, Ijaw and others would be marginalized in a new country. This fear is still being expressed today when Biafra is mentioned in any discussion among the minority elements. If you find any value from this video, please like it and consider subscribing to Hispol Media. Don't forget to leave a comment below. Click on the video displayed here to watch our previous episode on Victor Banjo. Thank you very much for watching. Peace.